Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. If this is your first time on my channel, welcome. My name is Brittany and I just had my fourth little boy, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about the crazy labor and delivery story that I had, because it was nothing like the rest of my children, and I love hearing other people's birth stories and just how it happened. And especially if you're a first-time mom, it's always really intriguing to know like how people went into labor and all of that. So I'm going to tell you guys how, and also how I induced my own labor and then almost didn't make it to the hospital. So I did do a birth vlog, and if you guys missed that, I will leave that up in a card here or in the description box below, and you guys can check that out after this video. It was kind of intense. At the beginning, I showed me having contractions at home, and I was probably a little bit further along than I realized and should have left already, but there I was at home filming my contractions. But I'll tell you guys how all of this started. I was 38 weeks and 4 days, and I had my last two babies at 38 weeks exactly. And the times before I had gone to the doctor and I was not dilated at 38 weeks with this baby. And I had heard from my hairdresser that she tried the, what is it called? Midwife's brew, and it put her into labor. And I'm like such a I don't believe any of that kind of stuff. I was like, yeah, it must have just been a coincidence, you know. And she said she actually told her friend to try it too, and it worked for her. So I researched it and Googled it for days, and I was like, all right, fine, I'm gonna try this. And I will leave the link to the little Pinterest thing that I looked at for the midwife's brew. And I took it on Friday night at 6:45 p.m. My husband was delivering some kind of baseball equipment, and I was like, I'm gonna mix this up real quick. I had mentioned to him about this drink that will put you into labor, and I was like, honey, it's not gonna work. I really just want to prove this drink wrong, especially if this is my last pregnancy. Like, I want to say that I tried it. So that night I mixed it all up in the blender. I poured it over ice because I heard it was pretty disgusting, and I drank it through a straw. You have to finish it in 30 minutes, and I did all of that. It tasted like straight almond butter to me. I couldn't taste really anything else in it. It was pretty gross, but I've had worse things, so I think it could be worse than it actually was. But by the time I finished it, I was feeling a little bit like, okay, nauseous. Like I couldn't have done any more than that. So the reason why I took it at night was because I get a lot of Braxton, or I did get a lot of Braxton Hicks at nighttime, but they never progressed into anything else. So I thought, if this drink is gonna work, it will be at nighttime, because that's when I've always gone into labor, is at nighttime, and I have contractions at nighttime anyways, so maybe this will just make them stronger. So I started feeling contractions about an hour to 2 hours later. I think I started to feel some an hour later, but I was like, these are just my normal Braxton Hicks, you know, they're not gonna get any stronger. And then as the night progressed, they weren't really going away. I was timing them. They were still a little bit like inconsistent, so I thought, no, they're probably not the real thing. And a little bit of a backstory, I did start out at home laboring with contractions with Cash also. So I wasn't unfamiliar with the feeling of contractions, but it was just that they were not super timeable. They were timeable, but they weren't like 3 minutes, 3 minutes, 3 minutes, 3 minutes or anything. They were like kind of scattered. So I laid down, tried to go to sleep. By this point I had already taken one bath. I laid down, tried to go to sleep. I might have fallen asleep for like 20 minutes, but it kept like waking me up and feeling really uncomfortable. So I got up, I took another bath, and then I went and made some oatmeal. And by this time it was like 3, almost 4 o'clock in the morning, and I started to feel, I was really hungry, but I couldn't eat my oatmeal because I was nauseous. And then the contractions started to get real, and I started to think, okay, I'm probably gonna need to go to the hospital, but I have a little bit of time. So Jeff was still asleep. Of course, all the kids were asleep. It's the middle of the night. The plan was for my mom to come and watch the kids, so I knew I was gonna have to call her. And I had told her the night before that, well, that night before she went to bed, that I was having some contractions that would probably go away, but just in case to have her phone on, you know, on hand and have it on so that if I called in the middle of the night, she would answer. So I sat down, tried to eat my oatmeal, and a lot of this is actually in the vlog. And I'm sitting there having some pretty intense contractions. And from that point on, things just progressed really, really quickly. Now, this is my 4th baby, so my doctor did tell me that I probably would progress really quickly, and I believed her, but I didn't believe her enough to where I was like zooming off to the hospital as soon as I felt those contractions. So I'm pretty sure that I progressed, as in like centimeters, my cervix, very, very quickly. About 4 something, I woke up Jeff and I was like, I think we need to go to the hospital. By this time I had already called my mom. Actually, I texted my mom and told her I think she needed to come. So she jumped up out of bed. She already had a bag ready and hopped in the car, and she was on her way. She lives about 30 minutes away. I'm pretty sure she made it here in 20. So she must have been flying down the highway, but she was like, how far apart are your contractions? And I was like, they're like 3 minutes apart. And she was like, oh my gosh, what? So she gets here. Sorry, the lighting in here is kind of crazy. I'm in Cash's room. She gets here and I am just I'm afraid that I'm not gonna make it. I was afraid I wasn't gonna make it with Cash, but I arrived with Cash at 5 centimeters dilated. This was way more intense. So our stuff was already packed. Jeff already had most of it in the car. We get out to the car and I'm like, I'm gonna throw up with every contraction. They were coming about every 4 minutes. And with every contraction, I was getting nauseous. So I had him bring a Target sack with him. And when I had my first contraction in the car, I threw up into the bag, and then I had him pull over and finish throwing up on the side, like in our neighborhood. So I think I had probably 3 more contractions in the car. Jeff was flying down the highway. I had the window down because, not because I was gonna throw up, because if I threw up out the window, it was gonna end up on my face. Just because I knew I wanted the air on me, and every contraction was so bad. Like, they were getting worse and worse. And finally we pull up, we zoom up to the emergency room area, we start walking in. I have a contraction, so I'm actually holding on to the metal trash can outside of the emergency room, having a contraction, and I didn't throw up at that point, but if I needed to, at least it was right there. And once that was over, we walk up to labor and delivery, and the lady's like, okay, I need you to sign your information here. And she's got like a little, you know, the little thing, and nobody is panicking. At this point, I'm not having a contraction, so I look like I'm just a normal, you know, pregnant girl walking in. And then all of a sudden, I start having a contraction, and I'm like, I think the baby's gonna come out. And the lady was like, she thinks the baby's gonna come out. And I was like, lady, I'm not joking. This is my 4th baby. I know what this feels like. I know what I'm doing. And once I said, this is my 4th baby, she was like, okay. You know, they start to believe you. Like, if it's your first baby, things progress a little bit slower usually. Not all the time, but usually. But by your 4th, they're like, okay, this girl's probably not messing around. So honestly, at this point, I think they told me to walk with them to a room, lay down on the bed. The girl was like, I'm gonna need you to take your panties off, which I don't know why I remember that. I just remembered being such a weird statement, and me, I'm just like, whoop, threw them on the couch. Like, I still had my dress on at this point, and they just lifted up my dress and they were like, okay, we're gonna check you. And as soon as she checks me, she's like, she's complete, which means I was at a 10. I was at 10 centimeters and ready to push. And I told her, the baby's about to come out. If I was standing there pushing a few times, it probably would have just fallen out on the floor. So they called the doctor in. About 20 people come running in, and they're all around me. And then at this point, I just close my eyes. Like, my legs are wide open. There's 20 people in the room. My husband is standing like right here holding my hand, and I just had my eyes closed. And with every contraction, I was just screaming and crying. I cannot even tell you the amount of pain I was in at this point. I just was like, I just wanted it to be, I wanted to be out of pain so badly. And they started having me push, and they were holding my legs, and I had like 2 nurses on each side of my legs, Jeff here, the doctor was down here. It was not my doctor, it was the doctor that was on call, and I love my doctor so much, and I wish that she had been there, but she wasn't on call. So I had another great doctor, but she was like, okay, with each contraction you're going to have to push. And I was in so much pain, I could not even think about pushing. I was like that patient that you see in the movies, the mom just screaming down the hallway. I was screaming, yelling, begging for anything, because this was not my plan. I respect any person who goes in wanting and hoping to do an unmedicated birth and they're able to do it. I commend you 100%. It is the hardest, probably the hardest thing I've ever had to do. And I was begging for anything. At this point, I had probably been pushing or not pushing, just yelling there, like screaming in pain, they were trying to get me to push, but probably for, I don't know, maybe 30 minutes or so. And then finally, they had told me, it is too late for an epidural. You are going to have to do this without any medication. And I had some great nurses on the side of me cheering me on, but I really just wanted to scream at them, because one lady was like, you can do this, you know, something like, I don't know what she was saying, but I wanted to say, have you done this, lady? If you haven't done this, then stop telling me that I can do this. If you have not pushed out a baby with no pain medication at 10 centimeters, then don't be talking to me. That's really what I wanted to say to her, but I did not have enough energy. So, and I know that she meant well, but I was just beside myself. And I looked at Jeff, and I was like, in between contractions, and I was like, we are never having any more kids. I am done. And then I had another contraction. I don't know if I meant that or not, but honestly, this labor was like, I cannot even. Okay. Somebody woke up. I'm gonna feed him while I'm talking to you guys. Okay, I apologize. I have to do the whole camera angle so that you guys weren't seeing all of it, but can you see his little hand right here? So cute. Back where I left off, I was pushing and pushing, and I just couldn't do it. So they had the anesthesiologist come by, and he said he could do an intrathecal, which I had never heard of before. It's not an epidural. You're not connected to anything. It does go into your back. I honestly do not even know what it was or anything. I still had my eyes closed at this point. He said that if I could hold still for about 3 minutes or so, that he would be able to put it in, and that it would give me some relief to help me finish, you know, pushing him out. So I was like, yes, please, like whatever you have to do, please help me. So he was so good, so quick. He got it in between a contraction, and literally within 5 minutes after he got that thing placed, they had the doctor back in, and she was like, okay, we're gonna start pushing. And I thought this was going to be like a gradual process. And she's standing, Jeff says, because my eyes are still closed, about 2 feet away from me, still putting on her gloves or whatever, and I start to feel some pressure, like I'm gonna have a contraction. So I pull my legs up, and I pushed, and I feel something just shoot out of me. And I had no idea that it was actually the baby. I was thinking, what just shot out of me? Was it my, oh, and let's back up just a little bit, my bag of water. When I actually got to the hospital, she said, you're at a 10, but your water is still intact. If we break it for you, it will help to speed up the labor and get you out of pain quicker. So I was like, okay, yeah, please just break my water. And I didn't say it like that. I was like, okay, whatever you have to do. And she broke my water. And the contractions did get even worse at that point. And anyways, I just wanted to address that because I did have some questions about, did my water break on its own or not? And it didn't. I got all the way to a 10 and it was still intact. So she broke it for me. Anyways, when I was pushing, I felt this something just shoot out, and I thought it was anything but the baby, because she wasn't like, okay, I can see his head, keep pushing, you know, like almost most deliveries are. All of my other deliveries were like, okay, we can see his head, you know, a couple more pushes and he'll be out. No, no, no. It was no warning. He shot out, and I opened my eyes and she was like so surprised that he was like, Jeff couldn't believe that she caught him. I was worried that she didn't catch him, if that was my baby that just shot out. And he said that she lunged forward and grabbed him and had this huge surprise look on her face, and everyone was just like, that baby just shot out. She laid him on my chest, and he made some noises, but he wasn't really crying. And he didn't really cry at all that whole time, but he was so healthy. Not a thing wrong with him, except that he had this huge bruise on his head right here. And the bruise was actually from coming out so fast. He must have like grazed my pelvic bone on the way out, they said. But for babies who come out really fast, sometimes they end up having a bruised head right there. And they said it wasn't bothering him. It looked bad, but that it wouldn't, you know, stay or bother him at all. So within a day or two, it was completely gone. For the first time in 4 deliveries, I did have to have stitches. I had a couple of 1st-degree tears, and that has been a new healing process for me because I never experienced that before. But everything else was super quick. We were discharged from the hospital so quickly just because everyone was healthy, and it was just the fastest delivery of my life. I wanted to fill you guys in on those details because my birth vlog didn't exactly cover all of that, because the time between me having contractions at the house and making it to the hospital was just me having contractions in the car, and then me screaming and yelling in the labor room trying to push a baby out with no pain meds. The recovery with this little guy has been really hard on my body. I have had a really hard time. I spent the first like 4 or 5 days home literally laid up in bed because it hurt me to walk or move, and I slept a lot, and then I realized that I had mastitis. So I went to my doctor, got some antibiotics, and I have been feeling so much better. I'm not 100% because it still is a little bit painful to walk. Not necessarily like where the stitches are, but just I feel like I had some trauma just all in my bottom area, which I did. So yeah, it's been quite the healing process. Sorry if you can hear my kids crying in the background. Jeff is out there watching them, but I wanted to introduce you guys to him. Hey, hey. He's all red because he was just eating. So this is baby Crew. He was 7 pounds, 1 ounce. Can you say hi? No, you're not into it? I hope to start up regular vlogs here pretty soon, but I've just been a little bit busy. But hopefully we will start up with regular vlogs soon. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel if you are new, and I will see you guys all in my next video.